Thanks all for joining. I see we've got some participants coming in. We appreciate you coming in and joining us. We're just getting things set up to go live on Facebook at the moment. So if you want to hold tight, the Q&A function is available if you have questions throughout. We'll start introductions here in just a bit, just giving people time to join um, on this beautiful Tuesday evening. Like those of us on Zoom are now being broadcast to Facebook Live. So that's great. Hopefully there's some folks joining us from there. If you are, welcome. We'll get started in just a little bit. We're going to let maybe people join for the next minute or two, and then we'll get started. Um, Maybe while you're waiting, you can browse some functionality, drop over on the Q&A if you'd like to, and drop a question in there for one of us while we wait. Oh, and apologies, Abby, I did mute you. Yeah. I think we'll give a little bit more time. We're expecting a few more attendees than this. So we'll give it maybe another minute. Apologize for the wait, y'all. So we'll start off with some quick introductions. My name is Eric Swanson. I work as the Advocacy Education Coordinator at 100 Miles. I'm a birder, I'm a father, and I love the Georgia coast, and that's part of the reason why I'm here tonight. Um, I let Abby introduce herself.
Thank you so much. First of all, thanks to 100 Miles for organizing this. And thanks to those of you who are joining us tonight. I'm Abby Sterling. I'm the director of Manomet's Georgia Bight Shorebird Conservation Initiative. For those of you that don't know, Manomet is a nonprofit that focuses on coastal conservation. And one of our main things that we really spend a lot of time on is thinking about shorebird conservation. So we started the Georgia Bight Shorebird Conservation Initiative in 2018. And I'm lucky enough to work with Allie Hazer, who's on the ground on Tybee. And we get to spend a lot of time in Georgia, South Carolina, and kind of the Southeast broadly.
Great. And a big thank you on my end to Stephanie Tuning from 100 Miles as well, one of our other educators who is providing tech support in the background right now. Big thanks to her. We also give our thanks to Manomet for being a really amazing and strong partner in lots of these issues. And we hope to do more of these issue investigations in the future on many different topics that affect birds. I guess, without further ado, we were hoping for a few more participants to join since we had so many register, but we'll jump right in. I'm gonna let Abby share her screen.
You have
Uh,
to let me. Sorry.
My apology. I can just do it on my end too.
Still says it's not
Yep,
allowed.
should be good now.
Oh, we're good now. Yep. Great.
Awesome.
Great. And then hopefully you can see that. Did it work? Oh, you're muted, Eric. Sorry. Okay. So do you want to kick it off, Eric? But you're still muted.
Yes, I will kick it off. Um, I would just like to start by saying that this is one of those really wonderful photos that makes me really happy, and I can think of this place. Um, so really wonderful to start this issue investigation with Manomet and 100 Miles combining together to talk about this Bird Island rule, the next steps with Georgia's Bird Island rules. So we'll go over a quick agenda and then I will pass it on to Abby. The agenda is pretty straightforward. We've already done our introductions. You know who we are. If you want to know more, always ask questions in the chat about our backgrounds. Abby's going to give some background on the issue, talk about the importance of the Georgia coast and the Bird Island rule, and give some history on how it came to be and why it's important and why we need to update it. And then I'm going to give some background on how to speak at the upcoming public information sessions and then hearings that will happen in the future regarding this Bird Island rule as we kind of change the way that it is part of our laws, of our state laws. So I'm going to talk to you about how to personalize your comments, make them most impactful, and then give you some information on when those info sessions are and talk to you about how other ways that you can comment if you can't make it to the info sessions, either by email or writing in person. We'll have time at the end for Q&A. And I think both Abby and I can stay a little bit later if we happen to run over with the Q&A. If you want to make sure you get your question answered, we'll stay on until we have them all answered. So thank you so much. And with that, I think I'm going to pass it over to Abby.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. Well, so as Eric mentioned, I just wanted to provide a little bit of background, sort of what makes our coast important and who's using it and who's impacted by the Bird Island rule. Um, First of all, I don't think I need to convince anybody on this call that our coast is incredible. We support around 300,000 shorebirds every single year as they nest, migrate, or spend the winter on our little 100-mile stretch of coastline. And because of that importance for shorebirds and seabirds as well, the Georgia coast was designated as a landscape of hemispheric importance for shorebirds. And that's because we support really significant numbers of some very imperiled um, species. We have nearly a third of the federally threatened rufa subspecies of red knot that uses our coast during migration. And we also have the federally endangered population of piping plovers that spends the winter here. We have really large percentages of some other species, including short-billed dowitchers and whimbrel as well. Um, and the reason that our coast is so important for shorebirds is really because of the landscape. We've got, I always say, sort of the perfect recipe for shorebird habitat on our Georgia barrier islands. We've got the islands, many of which are protected and undeveloped. We've got these huge tides because of our positionality in the curved part of the coastline, the Georgia Bight. And this landscape and these big tides it's very dynamic. It's always shifting and changing. New areas are building up like sandbars that form at inlets where you've got huge amounts of sediment coming out into the ocean. The barrier islands themselves are always changing, and so we've got this really dynamic place of sandbars and mudflats that help provide a lot of habitat for feeding shorebirds, for nesting shorebirds, and for migratory shorebirds as well. When we think about some of the most important habitats. Many of those places are kind of the more remote places, these little tiny sandbars that might not seem like much, but can be literally just covered up in birds during key times of the year. Nesting is a really vulnerable time, and we've got a good number of nesting species that use our coast. Shorebirds like American oyster catchers and Wilson's plovers, and then seabirds like terns, including least terns and royal terns, sandwich terns and gull-billed terns. Black skimmers nest on our coast, and brown pelicans do as well. And those are all broadly considered seabirds. So today we're going to be talking a lot about kind of shorebirds and seabirds and what they need and how they are impacted by this rule, and how it benefits them. So I wanted to take just a quick moment to introduce you to the cast of characters. We've got American oyster catchers. Here's an adult that's been banded. It was probably hatched right on our beaches in Georgia and banded by Georgia DNR with a chick. And these chicks are flightless and vulnerable for quite a while. The eggs can take about a month to hatch, and then the chicks are flightless for sometimes up to 40 days. So during nesting, these birds are really very vulnerable. The other shorebird species that we have that's a priority for the state is the Wilson's plover, a little bit smaller. And here's a photo of a Wilson's plover. And then a few terns that I just wanted to highlight. Least terns, which are a state priority species, and the royal terns, which nest in really large numbers. Least terns are the smallest terns. Royal terns are one of our larger terns. And then, of course, everybody knows brown pelicans and hopefully black skimmers too, because they're a really charismatic, wonderful species that nests on our beaches. Some of these birds, like the seabirds, tend to nest in really large colonies, while the shorebirds tend to be territorial and have very discrete nesting areas within a given habitat. And so one of the main things that the Bird Island Rule helps improve is the negative impacts of disturbance. And when we're talking about disturbance in this context, we're often talking about recreational disturbance. So when people are using places that are important for birds. There's a couple really key times where disturbance can cause some negative impacts for birds. During the nesting season, when you've got tiny little bumblebees on toothpicks, little Wilson's plover chicks running around, which nesting season runs from about mid-March all the way through summer and sometimes as late as August. And migration season, which during spring migration is from March 15th to about the end of May. And that's when birds are moving from the southern hemisphere up to their nesting grounds in the Arctic and stopping here to rest and refuel. And fall migration, which actually starts technically today, is the beginning of fall migration season for shorebirds, and it runs all the way through mid-October. And so those are birds coming out of the Arctic that have nested and are either moving all the way south, or some may stay here for the winter. So when we have disturbance at a site, it basically makes a site functionally unavailable. That's sort of how we think about it. It could look like perfect shorebird or seabird habitat, but because of heavy use by people, the birds are not going to be able to use it. And this is really problematic because many of our shorebirds are experiencing some very significant population declines, particularly the migrating shorebirds, but also our nesting species are very much at risk when we have areas with a lot of disturbance. And in many cases, they just will not nest in areas where there's a lot of people. And we're seeing that as well with our seabirds. One of the biggest contributors to population declines for shorebirds and likely seabirds too is loss of habitat. And so when we think about disturbance taking a place that could be good and making it so that the birds can't use it, that can really contribute to loss of habitat. So when we're thinking about disturbance, it's problematic. It can cause lethal or, in some cases, sublethal impacts for nesting, migrating, and wintering birds. And when we're talking about lethal impacts. I'll show you a couple photos coming up here. You'll see just how easy it is to not be able to see these nests and chicks. They blend in really well. That's their main defense against predators. And so obviously you can imagine if a person is unintentionally in a nesting area, that could be a lethal direct effect. But the other thing is that when the birds are disturbed, when they're trying to feed or rest or raise their chicks, it causes stress and it can contribute to the birds not being able to eat enough or put on the weight that they need to migrate and travel tremendous distances. So disturbance can be really problematic for those reasons. One single disturbance event can impact an entire nesting season. If the birds are flushed from their nests by a person or a dog and they're kept off their nests, those nests will overheat and the birds and the chicks the eggs and the chicks can die. Or it's just leaving them vulnerable to predation. And when there's a lot of disturbance, when birds are feeding and roosting, they are often flying and wasting energy that they need to migrate. So a lot of pretty detrimental impacts due to disturbance. And you can see in these photos just how vulnerable these nests are. Both shorebirds and seabirds nest out on top of the open sand. Their main defense is to have those nests blend in. And when they're nesting in large colonies, usually DNR, Georgia DNR will go out. We'll partner with them and other partners help as well, putting up signs and roping to let people know where these nesting areas are. But in many cases, especially in some of the more remote places, the area is just very small and the birds really have very little space. So this fine rope that you can kind of see here is a visual barrier. We usually put up educational signs, but the birds need to be able to have this whole place so that they're able to successfully raise their chicks. And I think this photo shows it really well. This is a photo from Ogeechee Bar, which is between Ossabaw and Wausau Islands. This is actually a photo from last year, but right now there's lots of birds using it as well. And you can see in the foreground here, all of these eggs. This is a royal tern colony. When these birds are nesting in their colonies, they're packed in really, really tightly. And if there's people or dogs in these areas, the birds will flush and leave those eggs vulnerable and exposed. Sometimes these remote places might be the only successful colony of black skimmers or least terns in the entire state. And again, those are state priority species that are showing some pretty worrying population declines. So each colony is of critical importance. And when you think about that one single disturbance event could basically ruin the success of that colony for the season, that kind of helps highlight why it's so important to protect these places. And again, just a photo. This is from a shorebird survey where we were documenting use so we know how to protect these areas. But you see just how small and vulnerable these little chicks are. When they're downy like that, they can't regulate their temperature, so they need adults to be with them. And so because of all of that, in 1998, the Bird Island Rule was created and passed to protect 5 discrete sandbars and sand spit islands in the state. Egg Island Bar, Satilla River Marsh Island, St. Catherine's Island Bar, Williamson Island, and Pelican Spit. This was difficult to pass. Georgia DNR worked really hard with community members, particularly with the fishing community and ecotourism partners, folks that rely on these environments and understand how important they are to the whole broader coastal ecology. Of course, for ecotour guides, getting to see from a distance something like this is really incredible. And from a sport fishing guide, having a bird island is a really productive place. So those community members were really important in passing the first Bird Island Rule, which closed those 5 sites to recreation and excluded dogs and other pets year-round. But our coast is a really incredibly dynamic place, and so over time, some of these places have changed. Some of them are no longer used by birds. Some of them may not even exist, like Pelican Spit. And new places have emerged. New places like Ogeechee Bar. And this is an aerial image, just so you can kind of get a sense. This place is really dynamic. It changes constantly, but that's the same place, and actually it might even be the same time frame as that image I showed you where all of those terns were nesting. And here's a video of what it looks like on one of these places. Covered in birds. And so if there's people even anywhere near the nests, the birds will leave, and those nests will be exposed. A single dog could ruin the success of this nesting colony. Really vulnerable. And so Ogeechee Bar is not included in the new listing, and that's because it didn't exist in 1998 in the same capacity. So because our coast is so incredible and places can change, site quality can change, new places could be created, DNR is updating the rule, and we're really excited about it. It's a great opportunity to include new sites like built islands, places that were created using dredge spoil material as bird habitat. So the Brunswick Bird Island, right in the Brunswick Sound, and the Cumberland Dividings, both created for birds, would be included in the new rule. And some new naturally formed areas, Cabbage Island, part of Little Tybee, and Ogeechee Bar. Plus, including provisions for future emergent and built sites. So as the landscape continues to change, if new islands emerge, if Pelican Spit comes back, there would be protections for those places. It includes protecting the full site, including the intertidal zone, which is really important with seasonal closures, and restricts pet use year round. And so a lot of this would be in close coordination with DNR, posting places and keeping tabs on what's happening. But really important to have this framework to support protections for these sites. And these sorts of protections exist in South Carolina and in Florida. So that's why we're really excited to get the same sort of framework here in Georgia. And really looking forward to talking to community members and our user groups, our eco tour guides, our fishing folks, to help highlight why this is so important. And I will pass it back to you, Eric.
Awesome. Thanks, Abby. So just, where do you come in? That's the big question, right? And so the big area is kind of this comment period, scoping period that's coming up with Georgia DNR. And so we're going to talk basically about some general guidelines for commenting. This can be in-person comments at the upcoming info sessions that we will let you all know about. It can be an email, it can be an in-person conversation, it can be a phone call, it can be a written letter if you'd like. This is just general guidance. So we talk about it in the frame of the 4 C's, being courteous, clear, concise, and complete. Being courteous meaning just being nice, being direct and nice. Oftentimes we give kudos during that time. So what are they doing well? What do we like about the situation? How is the situation beneficial for us as an individual? Being clear, having a clear ask of what you want. So in many of the situations, just uh, for this rule, supporting the rule and the expansion to those new emerging islands. Being concise, knowing what you're going to say, and having a set limit. We have learned from DNR that if you speak at one of the public hearings, the public info sessions, that will be 3 minutes here allotted, and that time goes very fast. And then be complete. So just wrap everything up in a good conclusion. That conciseness allows you to be really focused in the time and being complete by repeating your ask at the end with a thank you. It's really important to remember that, like above all else, we're just talking to people. Sometimes hard to get in your head or be nervous about making comments, but they're just people in the room and they're just people doing their job, and they know just as well as you that it's complicated and what you're doing is maybe out of the norm. And so they are very used to and very happy to hear from you. That's what this process is all about. The next slide will give a little bit more guidance. If Abby can get there. Yep, awesome. Cool. So when you're commenting, you always want to identify yourselves. You want to make sure that they know who you are. A lot of times it's very helpful in this case that you highlight where you live or you're a Georgia resident. Ingratiate yourself to the audience and decision makers. So the people in the room want to know why you're there, but they also want to know what's brought you there. And so making it personal and stating your ask and asking for that support from them allows you to be connected to their work. Remember, it's their job to go through this process. It's your job as a citizen to advocate for the things that you love and care for. And so part of that is this ruling that is a long process, but your 3 minutes or your letter or your email really does matter, and all of them are listened to and looked at. I can promise you that. When you personalize the ask, a lot of times I like to, as a father, talk about how I want these places to be protected for my children. I want to have a legacy. I want to have a future of the Georgia coast that looks like it does today. And then the last thing, just wrap up with a thanks. We've talked about this. Thanks for the good work that you do. Thanks for the important decisions and hard decisions that you make. This way of interacting allows us to be most impactful. And it's been proven and it's been studied. And so that's how we approach things at OHM. I think we can go to the next slide. So these are the upcoming information sessions. These are going to provide you more information, but also allow you time to comment. They're all at 6 p.m. And they're up and down the coast. But tomorrow is the first one, and that's down in Brunswick at the Susan Shipman Environment Learning Center. That's the regional headquarters. And so if you show up at 6 p.m. and you sit there, you can give your comment, and you'll learn a lot more about what's going on from DNR. There's also one at Crooked River State Park, and also one here where I'm at in Savannah at the Skidaway Island State Park. So options to interact depending on where you live on the coast to go to one of these sessions. Those comments are recorded and are part of public record. And it's part of the democratic process that we all are belonging to. I think the next one will give a little bit more information about how you can comment by email or by phone. You can also write in your comments. These are all really great options. All of them matter. And so don't think that a public hearing comment would have maybe more weight than any written comment. Any way that you can interact and support is great. I think it's really important also to note that these information and this information will be given to you in an email. We will have a recording either on our social media, OHM/Bird Island if you're on the web, or we will be sending out in your email if you registered for the event a wrap-up email that has all this information and the presentation as well. So lots of ways of accessing this information. The deadline to comment though is August 22nd. So if you are writing, it has to be postmarked by that date, writing in or emailing by midnight on the 22nd or 4:30 p.m. Sorry. Abby, next one. Awesome. So as we kind of stated, this is an information session beginning scoping sessions that we just talked about. There will be a later decision, but it will go in front of the State Board of Natural Resources at their meeting at 9 a.m. in September 23rd. So there's a lot of time between then. But that is kind of all about kind of getting the final wording and rules out there. Once that ruling is submitted, there will likely be another round of comments after this scoping round. So then a public comment period will happen, and you'll have the chance to weigh in again after that September meeting. So lots of ways to engage, and we will keep you up to date on that. Next one. Awesome. And so I always like to let you know that OHM wants to support you in this. We can provide guidance. We want to do that through, us knowing each other and becoming familiar with each other. So the next slide will give you my email and my cell phone number. Please reach out if you want guidance on anything or have any issue that you want help with, not just Bird Island things, but anything that is affecting conservation or the environment. We are here to help. And the next one. Awesome. So If you know one of us, you know all of us. Here's my information. You will receive this in email as well too, but please reach out if you want guidance on your comments. And I think we have time to jump into the Q&A and get those answered, y'all. So I know that Robin Kemp asked on Facebook, um, or stated also, people have chased birds on the south end of Tybee in the winter/spring. How can motels, etc., educate visitors? Do you want to take that one, Abby?
Yeah. Obviously Tybee Island would not be part of the Bird Island rule, but we've been working really hard with an incredible group of volunteers. Uh, Allie Hazer really has been doing an incredible job of getting folks on Tybee out to talk about birds. So we have Coastal Bird Ambassador Group, and there's some of those folks here joining us this evening. And yeah, educating people around what disturbance means for birds, helping people understand that some of these birds are traveling long distances. And if you're interested in getting involved with any of those efforts, we do trainings, we give folks gear and materials so that they feel really comfortable talking to the public. We'd love to get you trained up, and you can reach out to me. We'll include my email in the follow-up information too that you'll get for being part of the webinar. So if you're interested in helping people understand that the south end of Tybee is important for birds too, please get in touch.
Awesome. And then an anonymous attendee writes, will this update expanding protections have the potential to create more jobs in wildlife conservation? And I can give my thoughts on that. I think that any sort of investment by the state in wildlife conservation can mean more jobs. Um, that being said, in our current climate, there has been a lot of cuts. And so I don't want to ever promise that there's going to be more conservation jobs. There might just be the same amount of people doing more work, or doing as much work as possible.
Yeah, and I will say, maybe this rule doesn't impact job opportunities in the conservation field, but it does absolutely help create a healthy coast that supports all of the wildlife, which drives so much tourism and ecotourism and fishing and charters. And so I think really the healthier our coast is, the better we are all positioned to have a successful future. And I think this really helps solidify that.
Stacia Hendricks asked what kind of quote unquote pushback slash opposition on embracing the Bird Island rule is being noted to date.
Do you want me to take that?
I think I'll take a stab at it. We
Yeah.
had this question in the first round. I think there will be some opposition. There will be some opposition in that there has kind of always been a tough battle in the Bird Island realm, and it takes a lot of cooperation. But we're really formalizing the process with this DNR scoping, and then the rules, and then the hearing. So it's very democratic in its process, and that opposition will have a voice just like everyone else will have a voice. And it's important to remember that opposition now, if it's known, can lead to resolutions and can lead to really solutions to that opposition. What that opposition might be is just a compromise, or it might be a change in the way we word things or the way we access points. So we are really excited about the length actually of time that we're allowed to do this process and be involved, because it does allow for that compromise. But we do expect there to be opposition, as with kind of any institution or government creating new rules. I think that
Yeah.
Abby, anything
Yeah, I
that
think the only other thing is just, if there are thoughts that you have about this rule, sharing it with DNR is the way to go. And so maybe that's concerns you have or suggestions you have about how to make it more effective or create other opportunities. So being involved in the process is fantastic.
And Anne says, hello, can we get a hold of a simple email with impactful language to send in? And
Gosh,
well,
that's right in your wheelhouse, isn't it? 100
yeah.
mile.
Yeah, I can provide you with something that I wrote right now. And I can also help you to craft that as well if you'd like to reach out personally. But my prepared comment that I made really quickly, right, is a 3-minute comment that I would read live. I would also say a similar thing in email. It says, "Hello, my name is Eric Swanson. I am here today to speak in favor of the Bird Island rule changes. I would first like to commend the essential work that the Wildlife Resource Division does for the wildlife and people of our state. I am a Georgian and father. I love the outdoors, especially the Georgia coast. Sharing it with my children is one of the great joys of my life. The uniqueness of this area is one of the main reasons I live here. The fact that it is so dynamic is one of my favorite things to teach about as an educator. Because it is ever changing, providing protections for the wildlife that utilize newly formed land masses made either through natural or human processes is essential into conserving these species for the future. Nesting shorebirds and seabirds have been dealt a bad hand as of late. Rising temperatures, oceans, and intensifying storms, as well as predation from introduced species, create many new hurdles to overcome. Protecting these critical habitats from March 15th to October 15th will provide shelter for both nesting and migrating birds. Georgia can be a leader in conservation by instituting these new rules and following the science. This step will showcase the very real pride we have in these amazing places and imperiled birds. I appreciate the Wildlife Research Division's forward-thinking and active approach to address these challenges by allowing the public to comment on the importance of protecting these bird islands. Thanks again for your tireless work in conserving the wildlife and places that make Georgia so special. And that's my comment. I will likely read it out sometime in the near future at one of those meetings. I haven't decided which one I'm attending yet. But if you'd like to send an email and structure an email, I'd be more than happy to have a correspondence with you. And you can see my email in the follow-up that you'll be receiving likely tomorrow, midday-ish. Awesome. And then just a thank you. I think we can answer that one by saying thank you back to all of our participants who attended. One last check from Stephanie to see if there's any more comments on Facebook. Otherwise, we're going to end the webinar and say we really appreciate y'all.
We are good. We just got another question that I think just came in about why people would oppose the rule, but I think you guys already answered that.
Awesome. Yeah, and we are very aware that if there is opposition, those voices have a role in creating these rules as well too, and that's where compromise comes in, and that's where this process is so lengthy because we want to hear everyone's voices, and that's important. So. I would like to express thanks to Manomet and Abby Sterling, especially for all of their tireless work and for hosting with me tonight. It's been awesome to talk about this really cool issue and important updates that are happening as we speak. So, anyways, thanks to all, and I'll leave it as the last words to Abby.
I'll just echo thank you, Eric and 100 Miles for organizing this and helping folks make sure their voices are heard. And it is a really exciting opportunity for our shorebirds and seabirds. Making sure that they've got the places that they need is actually making a huge difference. So we're really excited about this, and I'm very grateful for folks that have joined on their Tuesday evening. And thank you, thank you. Feel
Yeah,
free to reach out if anybody's got questions.
yeah. Thank you all.